Hey everyone, my name is Tom Taylor with TechQ Designs, and I want to show you a little bit about the UP printer. It's a 3D printer that's been very useful in producing small products. Now I'm going to just go through the printer design interface and show you some of the different features and functions that are really helpful to learn in order to be able to create fun products. So anyway, here we go. So the first step is to bring up the control panel. Right here we see the build volume. I've loaded in a file that I already had, and you go ahead and you initialize the printer. That turns on everything and it makes the connection with the USB port. Once you've initialized it, then you have to go through a table preheating. So a table preheating is typically for an hour. It wants to get up to 200 and some odd degrees. You also can set the bottom height of the build platform. So when you're initializing it, that actually zeroes everything. And if you set the nozzle height, you can either choose to test it or not. I'm going to set the nozzle height to 135.4 because I know that's what it is. So if I set it to 135.4, set nozzle height, I'm not going to do the test right now, but that's what it is. So then you can see that we're preheating and we're starting to go through all the options. At this point you can just get out of it and it will continue to preheat. So if we wanted to unload that and bring in a new file, here we go. So here it is. It's an STL file. You can see that it comes in slightly above the build volume. It fits within the confines of the build volume once we start to move it or rotate it. You can scale this thing and make it smaller or larger, but when you do that, what ends up happening is it thins the material, and so it might make it unstable. So we'll get out of that. So then also you can move this around. You can move it in the X, Y, or Z directions. You can use it to rotate, and it can rotate depending on which is the best placement. The other thing you can do is you can do auto place, and that will place that within the center of the build volume. The build volume is about 5 inches cubed by 5 inches by about 6 inches high. So it's a little bit small, but it does work for a lot of things. So that shows you the setup, shows you how to build your raft volume or your raft, whether you want a raft or not. So this this shows you the Z resolution, which how high each build each layer is going to be. In this case, it's going to be 0.2 millimeters. My mistake. So. And then you can have support or not. So it was recommended to me that you use a support of about 10 degrees. And the base height is the raft. So that's the basic outline of what the UP printer is. You can see that it's very easy, very intuitive. You can go to open, and you can go to any file on your computer and go ahead and print from there. The good thing about this is once you print this, you send this off to the printer, it has an internal buffer. So if your computer shuts off, or if it goes to sleep, then all the G code is already formulated in the UP printer. So I'm going to open up KissSlicer, and that's the program to develop the G code for any part that you're trying to create. Now Kit Slicer is a little bit unfriendly, so if you say I want to open up something, you have to set where you're going to look for your parts. Here's an electrical box. I'm going to show you the way it typically comes in. So it comes in on its side. Unfortunately, you can't rotate it in Kit Slicer, which is kind of a problem. If we open up one of these files, we'll see that it comes in as NetFab. NetFab is a pretty good program in order to rotate this. So you go to rotate this part. You can rotate it about the different axes. Typically I use the x-axis, and we want to go around 270 degrees, and we rotate so it's on its back. Then when you go to save this, you need to save this part, export the part as STL, and you can see that then you have to find your you have to find the part that you're looking for, and you can see that it comes in as a rotated part. So that's the way you have to rotate that. Starter doesn't really help us if we can't rotate it, so we need to bring in a different file that you've already rotated in NetFab. So you go to your part, and we see that we've got a rotated part, so we have to get rid of this. So to get rid of this part, there's a little X here that removes everything. Then we have to open the STL file, and we can see that we've got the electrical box and we've got rotated. And so there we've rotated it and we've brought it in flat so that it, in order to move this around, you have a little bit of functionality in here where you can move it a little bit. You can also show the settings. This green line is the front of the build volume. You can see it as a fairly big build volume because this is the Type A machine. You can rotate it. Sometimes that's good if you don't want to print straight because of the way the lines, the extrusions work out. And you can add more, except in this case we can't add more because there's not enough room. Or you can rotate it back. So you can rotate it around the axis, but that's limited. If you look down here, it gives you different options. You can actually make this really fine, or you can go with a standard or a draft loop. So, and then it shows different settings that you can use. Two skin thicknesses is usually what people recommend, and the infill, that means it's solid, or you might have just a partial infill so that the walls are not completely thick, but or not completely filled, but they might be hollow. You can also look at the support. If you want to put support on, support is when you have something that is needs something underneath it. And here's the raft. Because of the platen for the Type A machine is not heated, so you don't need to actually have a raft on this. It usually uses blue tape or a blue sheet to adhere the product to the base. And so then you can look at your materials. In this case it's PLA. The diameter of PLA swells with contact with moisture, so it can go from anywhere from 1.75 to 1.78, and that can really change things. So you really want to make sure that that you get that right. I use 1.78 just because that allows me, even if it is 1.75, it will actually work a little bit better, especially if it's 1.78. So then these are the different speeds. You can also set the speed down here. You can move it up to as fast or slow, and you can center or move the thing around inside the build volume. And so then you have to go ahead and slice it. So you can slice it, and it's going to create G-code that you're going to use within a different interface that interfaces the machine to the computer. So now it's going through its iteration and it's creating a slice, and it's creating all the G-code for that. So then we need to open up Pronter Face, which is the interface for the Type A machines. So you're going to need to connect. You're going to need to set up your comms, and your comms need to be, those are the ports that you plug your USB hub into, or USB output from the machine. And you're going to need to set the settings at 230,400. That's very important. And then you go ahead and connect. And it will give you, if it's connecting, it will give you a connection signal. And let's see, sometimes I have difficulty with this. So let's see if we're connecting. We're not connecting yet. This is where it gets challenging. Alright, so we got it to connect, and it brings up a series of information on it. And let me explain a little bit about this control panel and everything. These rings move it left or right, the x-axis being the left and right axis. The z-axis right here, bringing it up and down. These units are in millimeters, so 100 millimeters or 10 millimeters or 1 millimeter. So you need to press these buttons. These are actually buttons that control it and move it around. This is X home. This is home, so that homes it on everything, Z, X, and Y. So down here we also have the printer. So if you set the temperature, then that's going to start heating up the printer head, which is, and we'll show you that later on. But you also might want to monitor the printer, and you need to load a file. So here's that, whoops. So here's that blank cover that we brought in. That's going to go and bring that in. It's also going to give you a kind of a basic idea of how long they think it's going to take to create. And it looks like it's going to take somewhere around 4.5 hours. I found that that this is about 2/3, or the actual time is basically about 2/3 of what they actually say. So if it says 4.5 hours, it usually takes about 3 hours. Then you can go ahead and set the temperature, and we've checked the monitor button so we can start to see that it's starting to increase in temperature. And this is the baseline right here, and this is the temperature as it starts to increase. So this is a little bit about how to print the printer controls. You can see over here you can turn the heater off, in which case then everything goes off. You can also turn the motors off, which is helpful when you're trying to level the platen. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this because now everything's going. And So that's a little bit about printer controls for both for the Pronterface, for the Type A machines, and the up printer. You can see that the up printer is a little bit easier. Well, thanks very much, and I'll have some more information about just calibrating these two machines later. And I hope you learned something.